Hello and welcome to the Love Foundry podcast. It is Saturday the 28th. We have all three of us here, which has now become a rare event. And Dan has something to say. What is this you would like to say, Dan?
Listen, don't prompt me. I'm never ready for that. Anyway, welcome, guys. Good to see you. I'm on my phone, so I don't know how that comes through. Kind of cracked, but there it is.
It does the job.
Yeah. I just want to, today, and whatever we do about the Love Foundry, I want to talk about what I see as a transformation going on in the inner world relative to the outer world of human material experience or physical experience or ego experience, personality life. So we have an inner universe and an outer universe, and they're always somehow in distant relationship to each other. And we have a continuous coming together of that. So we eventually will unify these two worlds in the human race and thereby unify them in the world. Because we are really distorting the world, human race is, tremendously. We're not just living in it, doing the best we can. We're actually applying a tremendous amount of mental, emotional, and physical distortion to the world because we're not operating with a full deck. We've left the aces and the kings out. So there's no unity between love and the human expression in any empowering way. Now, that should be fairly obvious to anybody who watches the human race for more than 15 minutes on some galactic television set. But some people don't seem to realize it. They seem to think that having some emotional attitude about love, like wouldn't it be nice if we all loved each other, is enough. And it's not enough. It'll never be enough. What will be enough is a genuine realization of the union with love that humanity is already engaged in, but is totally unconscious of.
Yeah.
So we all have it. We already have this union. And it's been gradually over centuries growing a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger until finally, what's this thing is attacking me? Until finally it's going to become a part of our life.
Yeah.
And so right now it's taken a dramatic turn towards recognition, the realization in the dim-witted human consciousness that we all call personality self, that love is actually here and present and filling the space around us. And if we simply make ourselves conscious of it in a deep and meaningful way, it could empower us and change humanity's destiny going forward totally and completely. In a positive way, incidentally, in case you wonder whether love will have a positive impact or not. So we've had a lot of discussion together, the three of us, about the things that we do in ourselves to keep this from happening and how we can adopt a posture in relationship to love to maybe be more in harmony with the inflowing love energy of the planet.
Yeah.
But it's changing. And I don't know whether you guys recognize the change going on inside of you in the love side of your personality, but it's putting tremendous pressure on the personality side of humanity. And we can see by humanity's craziness how they're responding to that pressure. And it's an old saying about the full moon, the sane become saner and the crazy become crazier when we get into the full moon cycle. Well, that full moon increase in energy, which is all energy, not just love, the whole banana. But in this particular case, it's a cosmic increase, plus a solar increase, plus a planetary increase, plus a human response to all that. And I think it's helpful if you stop and take a look. I don't know. Do you sense what I'm talking about, Taylor?
I do, and I like that you used look, because the whole thing that keeps coming into me is it's the vision. There's a visual aspect of all of this, and it's like, it's not just visual in the sense of seeing, but it is that too. But visual as far as where your vision falls. When you talk about this transformation, the way that I've been looking at that is the picture gets clearer. There's like a clearing that's taking place in my perception of this transformation you're talking about. It's like being underwater and you're coming out of it is what it feels like. It's like you're seeing things, but it's a different vision and things start to clear.
Okay.
The space
All right.
opens, it broadens.
Okay. That you don't need to say it any more different ways. I get what you're talking about.
Okay.
Because that's true. And I think that the visual perception is one of the first acknowledgments in ourselves of this transformation. Following that is the non-visual sense of this change. And what's a non-visual sense? Well, when you hear something in the distance, you don't necessarily know what it is. But the moment you see a train come around the track, then you know, oh, that's the sound of the train coming. So our other senses are picking up on it, and they will support it and reinforce it. And all of this is happening ahead of the intellect figuring it out. So don't depend on the intellect to tell you what the hell's going on in the spiritual world, because it can't embrace love. The intellect does not know how to process love into intelligent thought. It simply doesn't get it. It's like love is working in numbers and not musical notes or something like that. So does this ring true for you, Seb, or no?
No, it does. I mean, the visual side of things, I think also has been opening up. But I think my greatest sort of sense, in a sense, however you want to call it, is more of like a sensory feeling type thing. Almost like when you're moving through water and then you'll suddenly feel like a cool pocket. It's like you feel like, oh, this just changed. And you get a real feel for like things happening around you. I think mine is, rather than visual, I kind of have a feeling for things and how they feel, and that kind of determines whether I move towards things or take a different route. But I'm noticing things are changing a lot, and the visual side of things is happening too. But I think also my focus is changing. Like there's more excitement around these changes, which is putting more energy into these changes, which is putting me further into that as well.
All right, hold on for a second. If you pass too many milestones before we recognize them, then we lose people's thinking.
Yeah.
So I think that your sense of things is more of a group consciousness sense. You sense it wholly as a complete thing, which sounds intellectual, but it's not. It's more of a heart sense. It's a heart sense of the wholeness of things coming into view. And that's stimulating a sense of joy. And the sense of joy transfers to a sense of excitement. And the sense of excitement is a positive impulse that makes you want to pull it in stronger or make it clearer.
Yeah.
Whereas
Exactly.
intellectual evaluation of it by just recognizing that you're seeing something a little different doesn't necessarily do that. So rather than get out in the weeds with these changes, I just want to recognize some of them and then talk about what I see as completely different to how we have been moving up to now.
Yeah.
And that means I want to introduce the realization that the psychic world, the inner world, in relationship between reality, which includes the dynamic, active unity with love, and the half reality of the human experience, which is unconscious of love, are coming into impact with each other. And in a way that is and I think I said this to you, Taylor, the other day, maybe on a phone call we were having. It's kind of similar to how the Renaissance artists of the 1600s changed how we see paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Paintings before the 1600s, maybe back in the 12 or 1300s, 1400s earlier, were very flat, one-dimensional. You didn't see much depth in them. And nobody quite figured out why suddenly, which were all these fourth-ray spiritual initiate guys like Michelangelo and Raphael and Mona Lisa dude, all of these guys suddenly came along and just popped up in human experience and started painting the shit out of things. And you suddenly saw this immense depth in a painting that you'd never seen before. They were painting the court of Rome or the Christ and his angels, and suddenly you could see this whole thing unfolding in front of you, and it changed everything about how humanity looked at the world, because suddenly their perception was your perception, and it's a teaching lesson of how to perceive reality, not just because they could paint it, but because then you could see that much depth with your own perceptions. So that's like a big shift. And it came along in architecture with the Gothic cathedrals and some other things that happened at the same time, but it was a renaissance in consciousness, not in just art
Mm-hmm.
and sculpturing and building design. So this is like that, but multiplied with a whole bunch more zeros behind it. Because what you're looking at now is something that opens the living, illuminated reality of the inner worlds all interacting with each other with living beings without the density and rigidity of material forms, which is how the angelic kingdom functions. And the kingdoms that are the angelic kingdom is not just like one place where you look in and, oh, there it is, it's a playground and people are on the swings. It's a multi-dimensional world where multi-dimensional beings of greater and lesser consciousness are all interacting with each other without difficulty. They're not interacting necessarily perfectly because they're all evolving and growing into greater beings, but they're interacting with each other through love. They have all accepted the reality of life, expressing will, intelligence, and love in its physical universe. We aren't doing that. We're ignoring love in our physical universe. We have a cheap sentiment version of it, which we apply to each other when we find ourselves hugging each other, thinking that we're going to be together forever or something in our human experience. But it's not the same thing as letting go of the material boundaries that limit your ego or your personality identity in matter. So it's important to stop and take a think about this and realize that this is not, it's not changing in the inner world. That's acting like it has been for some time.
Yeah.
What's changing is how we relate to that inner world. And when I say we, I'm talking about there are several levels of human relationship to that inner world. There's the spiritual teachers and adepts of the planet who relate to that inner world much differently than we do and much differently than the average Joe does. And so we have to think about how that's going to flow into a sort of corporal interaction with the human race at the level of the worker of the world, the coffee picker in Argentina, and the intelligentsia people of the world, and the spiritually hearted people, and these spiritual teachers and adepts, and the angelic kingdom, which is working to come in and get involved in the game. All of this is happening. And it's been held back for centuries by humanity's inability and unwillingness to engage it based on having badly designed reality pictures of life based on what? Based on our material observations, thinking that that's how it is. Now we're
If I,
learning.
if I was
Hmm?
going to surmise this a little
Yeah,
bit,
go ahead.
it's almost as if, humanity has kind of uh, made progress within the outer world, the material world, despite doing it unconscious of the inner world. But we've kind of reached a point where there's going to be no great progression in the outer world, the material world, without consciously bringing in the inner world to that outer world. Is that a
That's
fair?
absolutely correct.
Okay.
Very clear summation. And you'll see the same thing happening with the physicists. The material physicists, the guys that were trained in discovering material science and applying technology to it, are doing the best they know how with the material transformations that are going on. And so they set up bus systems that run on Einstein's theory of relativity so that all the routes are relatively flowing together. But they aren't seeing the inner world that Einstein was perceiving, and they aren't seeing the quantum physics that doesn't obey the laws of material physics, but they're starting to. And because they're starting to, they're dividing up the physicists and the scientists into these different camps, talking about how the two interact and why it's different. And they're applying intellect to it, but intellect is not exactly the problem. You're not going to figure out quantum mechanics or love with the intellect because you're using a telescope that sees optical light to try to see infrared light, and it just won't see it. So we
That's a
can
great analogy, Dan.
no, I don't know about that, but I do know that I can't see infrared light and I can't see X-rays and I can't see ultraviolet by looking through an optical telescope. So we have to, so this is a crisis. I'm just pointing out that it's a crisis in all the sciences. It's a crisis in psychology because the psychologists of the world, the quote unquote thinkers, are working off Archimedes thinking. They're working off the Stoic thinking of the Greeks, trying to figure out a society with a philosophy that doesn't include love because of the Greeks realizing that you can't see it. So they worked at, they were trying, the Greeks weren't trying to define reality. They were trying to define a reality that humanity could form a civilization out of and grow. And at the time, we were about 5,000 years away from being able to do what we can do today by connecting ourselves to this fusion. So they developed philosophies of what we would call rational thinking, rational intellect, rational relationship. If you want everybody to survive and work out together, which is a good rational thought, then we have to devise a set of governmental rules that allow that to happen. And probably the United States Constitution is the best practical demonstration for a group of people of how that could work, which is a great scientific statement. How do we do this without the thing falling apart the first week because of the rich people, the angry people, the ignorant people, the smart people? So they did that. But this system has to give way to a better one because it does not include love. And that's why even in the American Constitution, spirituality or religion or spiritual concepts are eliminated from being built into the design. Because when you build a spiritual concept into the design, you have to have faith in it or belief in it. And that takes it past intellectual knowing. And so you can't do that. If you do that, then you're defining spirituality as this or that. And you're not defining it by your direct relationship to it inside of you and letting that speak through you, which is a very different concept. Taylor, are you there and are you with us and do you agree with all that?
Yeah, no, I'm
Oh,
following.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Just
thought
look
you
at
might.
where are you going?
Where am I going with it? All right. So what's changed and how are you going to work with it? I think the thing that's changed is your inner self is becoming a kaleidoscope. One of those little things you look through and look at all the little goodies and they show you different patterns and light. That's only one sort of version of a kaleidoscope. But it's a diffusion of light through patterns of thinking and feeling and physical consciousness.
Hmm.
So, in other words, you're becoming a doorway yourself into that inner world because you're looking in. You're taking away the door. You're deliberately, consciously trying to take the door down between you and the inner world of energies, beings, and love,
Hmm.
so that you can see it, so that you can interact with it.
Mhm.
And then, but it's not so that you can reinterpret it in an intellectual or emotional way and tell humanity what to do. That's over. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We being the people who see within. Now you have a much better way to do than that. And the better way to do that is not using your intellect, which does not really understand or comprehend love, except to have reverence towards it. You can actually be the doorway itself, like a stained glass window, and let it shine through you. Let it shine through you into humanity and not define it for anyone. Let them define it for themselves. And because there's different kinds of human beings, 7 basic types of human beings, you get enough different types of human beings and you're going to get very different expressions of this through people because we're imperfect. We're not clear lenses yet.
No.
Now, there are above us in the hierarchy of conscious beings, which starts with humanity. We are self-conscious, aware beings. So there's a hierarchy in us. Some of us are smarter than others. But beyond us is the hierarchy itself, which are the spiritual beings who have grown out of humanity and into that next kingdom. And they give a much clearer, less diffused, more pure expression through themselves of these different kinds of energies that fill this vast inner space of spiritual reality. So they're offering their stepped down version of that reality because if you want to know what's going on in the consciousness of the sun itself as a being in the universe, you realize, oh, I'm going to have to take a few more courses to be able to interact with that. I don't even know what the planet is thinking, let alone the solar being in whose life we all live and move and have our being. So these spiritual beings understand this because it's not their first day at what I'm talking about. So they take that highly complex and integrated universe and they bring it down into themselves and as best they can offer a version of it to humanity that can make sense to us for the next maybe 1,000 years or so while we grow up in our eternal expanding and growing consciousness of the universe. But this is a big step out of the human ego stage that sees nothing of this.
Hmm.
The door's not open. The door is wooden. It's lead. It's iron. And we don't see through it into the beauty and splendor of these energies of being that do not require dense physical boundaries to be separate from each other. They do just fine. They do fine because the attributes and aspects of love that they incorporate into their being take care of them, protect them, and offer them refuge of individuality and identity in the midst of all of this maelstrom of energies. In other words, the universe works just fine with love running that show. Now, if you're out in the universe without love, it's a little rougher. It's a little
Yeah.
more hostile, as humanity knows. So I think it's time to look at, and I'm not saying more than I'm actually trying to say. If you start realizing that the fires that burn inside of you, that are spiritual fires of all these different rays and kinds and frequencies and identities and beings, it's all living, organized, functioning. If you stop trying to analyze it, define it, and tell other people what it is, and just show it to them through the opening of your heart and through the illumination of your mind, then you're going to be adding that to what you already are doing. I'm not saying don't try to explain anything to somebody. You do have to function in a material world, you need to teach a net mender how to fix a net. because you get rips in your net and someone needs to know how to fix it because you're catching fish so that you can eat them. This is what goes on in our material world. But in addition to that, you can add to it this opening that lets reality shine through you and not try to cage it, not try to qualify it with your intellectual idea that it should be a little more of this and a little less of that. That doesn't mean you don't have conversation and expression of what you're showing to people, but there's a difference between defining what they're looking at in you and helping them see it clearer. So the language of our society has to change. We don't need priests telling us what God wants us to think or do or act or who to marry or any of those kinds of material qualifications. It's not that those are bad. It's that they're not any longer relevant. People can decide for themselves based on their interpretation of reality as it actually shines into the world of what their personal conduct should be. And if we don't give them the chance to do that and don't shine it on them as it is in us, then we fail them in our own effort to shine light on the situation. So, does that make any sense to you, Taylor?
Yeah, it's like a joke's not really that funny when you have to explain it to somebody. But if you just are presenting it, and people either laugh and there's no thought about it, it's just an experiential thing. It reminds me of that. It's kind of like comedy or anything.
Well, the important thing, look, this is the second time you brought this in, and I think, well, Seb brought something in like that, because there's an element that comes with doing this. There's a number of elements. Beauty is one of them, but joy is the other one. If we can do this, and look, there's probably 1.5 million human beings that are capable of recognizing and acting on what I'm talking about right now. Now that number will grow exponentially as it is demonstrated to people, and they go, "Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah, I can do that." Stop thinking about it and just show it. I mean, there's children that can do that. It's if I'm talking to blind people and I'm in a cathedral, I can explain to them what a stained glass window looks like, but they're not going to understand it. But if I can show it to them by simply revealing the light that's coming through it, then they will get that much of it at least. So shining it is one thing, but allowing the intangible qualities of love to come through with the light that's interactive in all the 7 colors coming in their own spectrum coming from the spiritual world, then we can get a sense of the joy that comes with it, that the beauty that comes with it, and the relationship to truth that love brings by filling the picture in with all of the missing colors. If you're given crayons and a picture of a stained glass window, then you only got 3 colors and you're missing one of the primary colors, you're going to have a hard time representing the stained glass window. But if you're given even the 3 primary colors, you can blend and color blend and you can show the whole spectrum. And will and intelligence and love are the 3 primary colors of the universe. So you've got red, blue, and yellow. So you have to put these 3 primaries in. You have to put love in and let it blend with the other ones, because without blue, you're not going to get purple. And without yellow, you're not going to get orange. So the other secondary colors all start to emerge when love enters the picture. And we realize at a certain point that we've been looking at the entire color spectrum of the universe wrongly because we've been filtering out the color of love. And doing that, no matter how clear the picture is, it's never quite satisfying, which is why we keep digging to get to the treasure. Well, this is a moment at which you realize that the treasure is found inside of you by simply clarifying your period of observation. Just look in and stop thinking about it. Stop having a feeling about it.
Hmm.
Just look in, and you'll see that nature is taking a different position with humanity and saying, here, try this. And if you ignore that, you keep pushing it aside because you're looking for a better way to figure it out, a better religion to teach people how to live in harmony with God, or one of those kind of ideas, then you're shoving what nature is working really hard to do to bring humanity into harmony with itself out of the way. You're shoving it aside. And worse than that, the beings on the earth, like the Christ, or beings that follow the path of the Buddha, or those kind of beings that are working really hard to show you that reality, you're shoving them aside at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're, instead of choosing them, you're going to choose intellectuals who pose theories and who pose philosophies and who tell you what to think and what to feel. And you're going to be stuck in the material scientists trying to figure out quantum mechanics. Well, we don't need to do that, because even computing has figured it out. They're not going to try to solve all the problems with electrons. They've dumped electrons. They're now going to photons in their little chips. Those little 2 nano chips that they're building now somewhere in Taiwan or some other place, NVIDIA or something like that, they're using photons, which travel at the speed of light, do not generate heat, and if approached properly, can hold data in them and show you things at a speed and a depth and a multitude that you could not even imagine in an electron world. So we're going to speed up computing and AI and all those things like a million times. But if you use that speed to focus on intellect, instead of clarifying the lens of the heart and the lens of the mind to see into the world where love is the dominant energy, then you miss an opportunity that we desperately need to not miss. Now, Seb, what do you have to say about all that? Is that clarified? I mean, you're pretty good at synthesizing
it. Well, for me, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and the most poignant and I think important for me and maybe for everyone, but it's I really like the idea of the kaleidoscope, because I think it sums up in a lot of ways what we are, which is this misshapen, multicolored, the light is not coming through in any pure way. But if we're focused on that and trying to focused on that light and just offering that in what we do, and know that that's uh, who we are, that misshapen, blotted light that's mostly getting in the way, but that we to offer that out, I think, is a really beautiful thing. And I think it's the only way that we progress. And I think it's the only, whatever we do, whatever, we need to focus on opening that door and being that light, and allowing it to come through.
Okay. So that means stop trying to solve it with your mind.
Yes, you have
Because
to.
I remember when you were trying to do that, and I was giving you kind of a hard time, but it was because that's the only tool we seem to have in the shed. It's like,
Yeah.
to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we have to think about how we're going to do this. How do we craft a new tool in the shed? And we get closer to this if we realize there's only one light. There's one light.
Yeah.
And within that one light, there has developed countless lights. At each level of frequency, it's a whole spectrum. There's a spectrum of spirit, there's a spectrum of love or soul, and there's a spectrum of physical reflected light, which makes up our worldly spectrum and our rainbow. So when you think about these different spectrums, you realize all being driven by one light. There's one light that's causing all of those to appear. And it brings you into the understanding things like the words of Paul, one of Christ's disciples, who said, we see through a glass darkly, but then we'll be seen face to face. And that's the difference. We're clarifying our own inner Coke bottle. We're looking through the bottom of a Coke bottle.
Hmm.
But that's in our consciousness. Don't blame the Coke bottle. You're looking through your own inner medium, the medium of thought, the medium of emotion, the medium of your physical substance, the medium of the eye and the atoms of the eye. You're looking at reality through your own construction to the stage that you have built it at this point. And if you want it to see clearer and see more purely into the universe, you're going to have to purify it. You're going to have to work at it. And that's what humanity has indirectly been doing by wanting to see better. We want to see more. We want to see more of reality. We want to see more accurately. Well, that leads to seeing better, seeing more accurately. It's an automatic. When we want something inside of us and we're committed to it, it happens. There's no question about it. So I think that that's what's going on. And I think that's brought us to this threshold. Now, how is the inner world changing? Well, cosmic energies are constantly flowing to our solar system from cosmic sources, constellations, stars, beings out there we may never have heard of. But as it arrives at our solar system, it's synthesized by the solar system itself through its own lenses and distributed to planetary lenses. And they, in turn, whatever stage of evolution or development they are, bring it to our planet. And then we have it accessible to us to try to build our better inner vision out of. So there's a cooperation and a synthesis going on here.
Hmm.
And that's changing as astronomy and astrology change because we're moving through space. We're entering a space that we've never been in before. The galaxy itself is rotating. The universe is rotating. Our solar system is chugging through space at like 22,000 miles a second or something. And we're going around the planet at our own speed. So we're entering new space with new qualified energies all the time. And now when we enter the space that's qualified by Aquarius, or a group of stars that we call Aquarius, that changes our opportunity to know things that we otherwise did not know. And that's partly what's changing the inner kaleidoscope in us.
Hmm.
And that's being handed down to us through the Buddha, the Christ, or other beings in the inner spiritual hierarchical world that care about all of this that I'm talking about in a way that we don't know how to care about because they're smarter than we are. They have learned more about this journey that we're on and where it's going and what the difficulties are and the solutions. But we have this strange thing called free will. And there's anything in the universe, except perhaps God or some entity that created free will, can do about that. It's not overridden except by that which we would think of as evil. We name things evil because they override our free will. They try to. You can't really. I can force you to stand still or force you to run or force you to do this or that, but I can't really change you by altering your ability to do it by threatening your physical form. That's how evil works. It controls the life within the form by controlling the form. And we've seen governments who attempt to do that all the time, including our own, wherever you happen to be. There's that in our government which thinks they're smarter than we are, and if they tell us what to do, now that doesn't mean everything they tell us what to do is wrong. Don't step on the grass could have a very good meaning. But trying to tell people who to pray to, what to think, when to do this, when to do that, as if they were some cosmic daddy, isn't workable anymore.
Hmm.
We have to find within ourselves that aspect of life which directs us toward our own self-perfection through love, which it does, and supports us in that journey by giving us what we need to achieve that perfection. That's how powerful love is. So you can't blame people for trying to tell you not to eat the yellow snow, but there is a place where you can tell yourself that you don't want to do that anymore. You want to know before you eat the stuff whether it's good for you. Well, love can tell you that. Intuitive mind can tell you don't eat the yellow snow before you even think about eating it. But we don't use that aspect of ourselves because it comes through that inner clarity when we let go of the inner door and open it and throw the door away. Then the light comes through you that informs you before you have the experience. Without love, you are forced to have the experience first and then gain the understanding. That's how we have learned not to eat the yellow snow. And that's how we have learned not to be eaten by alligators, bears, critters, diseases, all the things that threaten humanity. We have learned without love through intelligence and emotion. And they've been good teachers because we're still here. But adding the love as the teacher of your consciousness, wow, what do you gain with that? All of a sudden you're going light speed because you're being told what the outcome of your experience is going to be before you take the first step. And that's like, well, that can't happen, could it? Yes, when you no longer need to take your steps through intellect, through intelligence and will, and you can then add love. And now when you add love, love says, where are you going? I'm going to self-perfection through love. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, take a right at the next corner because that's where it leads. So you see, there's an answer to that because love knows how to perfect everything in the universe, including every human being, everything that's ever been created, everything that's evolving and growing. It knows how, and it empowers you with what you need to be able to act on it. So an advertising love with that kind of power would seem like an easy sell, wouldn't it? Who doesn't want it? Particularly when it's free. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to go down to 7-Eleven and get it along with one of those remarkable hot dogs. You can actually just receive it and use it and be in harmony with it. What a concept. So we're at a place where that can be discovered in a incredibly large way. And if you have 1.5 million human beings that can open the door inside themselves to shining that out into the world, at least a little bit from their own clarity, then we have a way to get this going in a big way, in a very big way. And those 1.5 million beings are growing up right now in the world. They're children. Some of them are older. There's a few that have gotten to the age I am, and even some older. But the point is that they have to discover it. They have to realize by someone demonstrating it around them that this can work. Now, maybe I'm wrong about all of this.
No.
But I've been observing new moons and full moons and group consciousness and meditation for, 60 to 70 years. And I have to tell you, it's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah.
And because I remember how stupid I was. I remember how I looked at the world when I was Seb's age and younger and said, oh, fuck, I know everything. I know how all this thing is going to work out. And I didn't know jack. So now it's clearer.
Yeah. To
And,
me
and I
too.
also can see my way through to clarity itself. Go ahead, Seb.
Well, I was just going to say because of the meditations and everything that we've done, and because of the work, I know the importance of others who can hold that space around you. Who can offer you a dim bit of light, because then that feeling of knowing that it feels like unity, or I can't quite explain it, but it draws you in and it makes you want it, and then any sort of material experience becomes deeply more shallow. So that makes you want to experience that more, which means you have to open it up yourself.
Shallow may not be the most positive term you could use.
No, well, that's true, but
It's just not as complete.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. How many people do you know who can hold group consciousness around a group of people or an individual person or a child or a turtle? How many people can do that without wanting something for them other than what they want for themselves? Who can do that without interfering with the free will or evolution or development of that creature, which has its own story embedded in it?
Hmm.
We don't know what turtles are going to turn into. Taylor's got a bunch of big fat ones laying on the beach around her when she goes down with the kids, but we don't know where they're going. We don't know what. They've been around a long, long time. I mean, that was the symbol for the previous universe, was the turtle that swims eternally in the great ocean with humanity or civilization or the universe on its back. So that's an old symbol. And now we don't know where that turtle's going and what it's going to become. So who are we to tell it that it's got to become an eagle or a bird or some other creature or a human being in a way that we don't recognize? So who can hold that trust of letting love do the educating of Taylor's children or the world or the things that we're trying to see advance and become better? It's hard to do, especially if you've got a Harvard education, or if someone has told you you're smart, or you're a philosopher, or you're a religious priest, or you have the answer to the goals of eternity. How do you just not do that? How do you just leave love coming through you to embrace people and grow them like sunshine? It doesn't seem adequate to people yet.
Well, only if you have enough experience with love, and then you
Yes,
trust it.
yes,
In that,
yeah.
until
Or
you
enough experience with yourself to realize how fucked up you are and that you can't do it. You
yes,
need a better teacher than yourself.
yeah,
And
but
and I
some
think,
people are
by the
pretty
way,
convincing to themselves and others.
yeah. And I know, Taylor's a fan of Rudolf Steiner, and I've been a fan and other things. And I've been a interactive agency with hierarchy and the Christ and the Buddha type folk for many generations, actually. And I realize, and it took me a long time to figure this out about them because they're so fucking smart, that it looks like getting smart is the goal of a spiritual adept or something, but it isn't. Getting out of the way and letting love itself come through you clearly, perfectly, unaltered. And it's not just unconditional love, it's love unconditioned by you. So I've learned that that's what they do, and they do it as a group. And they do it by a far deeper understanding of what we're talking about than we're holding, because they've actually realized it in themselves and seen the productivity of it, seen the value of it in a far higher dimensional way than we do. Not all of them, well, most of them, because you can't get very far in that spiritual hierarchy without realizing that love is the only game in town and the rest is just being good at it. And whether it's the Christ or the Buddha or somebody giving out to us something from the inner universe, they're none of them doing it without a complete interaction with love at the maximum level they can do it. They know they have a lot to grow into. The solar system itself has a much more comprehensive inclusiveness of love than anyone on our planet. But once you know that, then you have at least where you're going. You're going to a better version of yourself.
Hmm.
So we need to realize that this is a big universe. We're part of it, and we're growing. And Earth has a very unique and special property in it that we don't know yet. We haven't realized yet. And I think our free will and our ability to make conscious choice is part of that.
Sorry, I'm still here. My monitor gave out. But Dan, I think that's such a getting out of the way and giving love unconditioned to the greatest of our ability is a beautiful way to sum it up.
Well, yeah, you have it. You have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Now, how good are you at it? I don't know. I'm not very good at it, but I'm working at it, and I realize there are others that are really much better than me. And they got better than me because they really wanted to do that. you're going to get the flavor of ice cream you want, because that's what's churning away inside of you. And so if you want greater harmony and clarity with love, if Taylor wants that for her kids so that they can learn it and they can grow in it, then she's going to find it. She's going to go get it. She's going to apply it to her children, and she's going to see the results like growing onions. So I think that that's where we are. And I'm just pointing out today that I think, and I've seen this growing. I've consciously seen this growing through 3 years of new moon and meditation and full moon and meditation, changing and transforming, because those are moments of group experience, at least planetary group experience, and then greater group experience when you include the fusion of astrology with human consciousness. So I've seen it changing, and I am amazed by it, because sometimes it's really dramatic, especially at certain full moons and new moons. But now I see something that's emerging here that isn't clear yet. And that is this idea of letting go of your inner self to what is further in you that you're not seeing, because you've got a doorway of color and density and blocking of light that makes you look like it's not there.
Hmm.
I think Taylor just bailed on us. Well, you know how sensitive she is. I probably said something that upset her. No, she had something to do, and she said she was going to leave early, or she might have just passed out. We don't know. If you start drinking too early in the day, this is kind of thing can happen to anybody.
Yes,
So that's all. I don't know if you have something you want to say to finish that up, because I want to see that growing during the month of Cancer, because Cancer is an energy that includes everything.
Hmm.
It builds this house of light, and we all live in it. And yet it carries all three qualities of light. It carries the physical light that lights matter itself, the substance of matter, the atom of matter, and it lights the substance of love, and it lights the brilliant, intelligent light of spirit. So there are three different levels of light that you can find in Cancer when it's here, and it's bringing everything up in vibration and in unity to itself. And it was entering the new moon of this particular month that we're in that made me see what's going on, how it's going on, and what I think is differently. And when I look at the Christ being, the Maitreya being of hierarchy, who is the head of hierarchy, world teacher, spiritual leader, all that stuff, I see that being coming into the world, showing that light through itself out to the world. Now, what's the point in showing that clarity out to the world through its own heart if you're not looking to see how to do that in yourself?
Yeah.
And that in itself, I think, is a revelation worth considering. Because if you're not doing it and you suddenly see, oh, that's what that person is doing, that person's not teaching the world how to think about mathematics. He's showing you that which is the essence of life and light and love and will and intelligence out of himself in a way of harmony.
Hmm.
And that's the greatest offering I think you can give, is by synthesizing that in yourself and showing it to beings that need to interact. All beings, animal, plant, mineral, human, smart, dumb, highly evolved, anxious, angry, sinners, saviors, saints, whatever they are, it's the same thing for them. So they can find that in themselves, they can respond to it from within themselves, and they can bring themselves into harmony with that being and its expression. And that brings them into harmony with the Buddha and the other beings that are there, and the Bodhisattvas, and the whole picture of cosmic evolution. Anyway, that's what I think is going on. And our job at the Love Foundry is to help people find the posture in themselves that puts them in relationship to that light.
Yes.
And that's not an intellectual concept any more than Nureyev going into a posture of dance in relationship to Swan Lake or one of those things is an intellectual idea. He has a framework in which he's moving, but the spirit of him, the light of him, the demonstration of freedom and human triumph over form has to come through in that movement, in that posture. And there is a way to address ourselves to that posture, to open ourselves to it and to let it shine through us. And then we can develop our intellect and our personality to come into harmony and relationship to it. And then pretty soon you can feel the joy of love empowering you. And as that joy increases and your sense of union increases and your sense of infinite possibility starts to unfold, then you become a very powerful human being and an influence on everyone else. And you know that's already in you. You've seen it in you. And you see that if you apply yourself to it properly, it's going to grow exponentially. It's going to grow fast. And this way I'm looking at, which is letting go of holding the illusion of a doorway between you and the flow of life. If you just let go of that, it can start to flow through you. And all of a sudden you've made huge progress in 1 minute. And if you keep that going, it's like a log jam. You can look at a log jam and think there's no way in which all of this shit can get out of here. But having lived in Alaska, where you have ice packs and log jams all piled up every spring, you see that finally something happens and it lets go. And when it lets go, boy, a lot can happen in a hurry.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And
I
if
know
humanity
that
stops
people,
reacting with fear, it'll happen in a positive way.
yeah. You see it in people in small ways and major ways, but just it comes to a moment and then just change, and that person will never go back. And I think it's the same. I think all of those moments are spiritual growth, but I know that this moment that is coming to us now, I think we're ready for it. And I think
Oh, yeah.
it's you know, the logs are already moving. You know,
Yep. No,
the sides that are holding them together are already starting to break apart, and it's the movement is happening, and it's just gonna go.
no, it's going. In Alaska, every spring they do a lottery on when the ice is going to go out. And you know, and during the winter you can drive your car out on the ice. It's that thick. Not everywhere, but a lot of places they go out and spin their cars on the ice. It's maybe 5-6 feet deep. But there's a certain point in the spring where it's going to go, and it's going to all go at once. But there's going to be a start to it. And so they take a lottery on it, and you buy small windows of time in the lottery of when the ice goes. Now, how do you measure that? How do you measure when the ice goes? Because it cracks. And they have a place, you know, somewhere up in the Yukon River where they're listening for the crack. And when it happens, whoever's the judge is, I don't know. I don't know the inside of it. I just know you could buy time. You could say, it's going to happen 10:30 on April 15th in the morning. And somebody would win every year. Now, technically, is that when it went crack, crack? I don't know. But when it starts, you hear it. You can hear ice cracking, and it goes up and down the Yukon River. And then you know it's not going to be long before the ice is going to start moving in great big chunks floating out to the ocean. And it's a fantastic thing. And it happens every spring. And this is the springtime of humanity for this ice flow breaking up and sweeping out that opens us into the limitless world of love. Now, in another podcast, I want to talk about how you have to adapt to that, because you can't suddenly just go into the universe of love and start living that way unless you want to leave the human world, unless you want to leave the material kingdom, because you have to have an operating system to function in the material world, just like a computer does. But you also have to have an operating system opening into and harmonizing with the living lights of the spiritual world. So you have to have both. And that's a duality that human beings are designed to live through. And I say live through it because it's a stage in which those two that duality of two parts of being, kind of schizophrenic, because one of you is a material person that's trying to get to work on time in LA traffic, and the other is a spiritual being trying to synthesize all of these lives in yourself as a living relationship. Those are kind of far apart for the average person. But the moment you take on that responsibility to do both, they start growing in you. And then they start moving closer and closer together once they establish. And at a certain point, they start connecting electrically to each other. And then they start magnetically attracting to each other. And all of a sudden, a new being emerges, which is the union of the two. And we don't know what that consciousness is like, because it brings with it the soul of love as a conscious part of your anatomy. And when that happens, you don't sharpen a pencil the same way. You don't do anything the same way. And you have opportunities and gifts and powers that are just undescribable to people who have no consciousness of it. So if we work towards that with some positive faith in the unity of the universe, and the universe has been through this before. We're not the first human beings, as much as we may like to think so. So it's going to work. And when we get our teeth in the situation and get our free will aligned to the idea of doing this, it's going to happen fast. And that part of humanity which is ready for it will come into incarnation, appear around us, and they'll grow up as kids that seemingly light years ahead of the kids we were, and they'll start doing things that seem impossible to the rest of us, but they're just setting the stage for the rest of us. And then we can start learning from them and applying their inner freedom to our own inner freedom, and then clear out the resistances to it from past karma or past anger or past difficulties that we've been through. It's a process, and that's why forming a solution to that process that's easily learnable and can apply to yourself needs to start now. That's why we formed the Love Foundry. And it's not that its techniques or its ideas are anything special, but we understand that they need to be born, and they need to evolve, and they need to develop, and they need to attract people to it to strengthen it and make it better. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
and I think it will work like mad once it gets going.
Yes.
Which will probably be sometime after I'm gone, but either way, it doesn't matter.
No, we're getting close. We're getting
Johannes
close.
Johannes Kepler was a guy long time ago who figured out the rotation of the planets around the sun mathematically. And one of his friends, and he wrote a book about it, one of his friends said, "You do realize that it'll be 100 years before anybody reads your book?" And he looked at him and said, "Well, God's waited 5,000 years for an observer. I can wait 100 years for a reader." So you do have to have a sort of philosophical perspective on these things. But we each of us goes on. We go on in life, and we go forward. And if I come back into this world again, I'd like it to be in a better harmony with love than it is now. So I'm going to do what I can to make that happen, and hopefully others will too. And that's going to be the result.
But I think most importantly with this process is it's not joy because of the result. It's the joy of being. So the doing of it is as joyful as any result could be, if even a result is joyful at the
What
end
you're
of it.
saying is important. Joy is not a response to a recognition. It's by us. We don't get joy because we see, oh yeah, the ice cream cone is now being handed to us. Joy is an automatic expression of doing the will of love itself, or the soul itself. It escapes from life into us because we have approved its origin in us. That's an odd way of saying it, but it's born from our action in relationship to source.
Yeah.
But only the source that love itself is the animating energy of. because it releases it into us like fire catching fire. It's a spark.
Yeah.
And it's not a feeling. Otherwise, you're going to categorize joy as a feeling, and it's not a feeling. It's a release of energy as a result of actions taken in relationship to love and unity and wholeness. And ecstasy itself is another state that's a further expansion on the process of joy. And humanity at this stage has such a low vibration that ecstasy cannot be contained in us for very long without burning out our fuses. So we start with joy, we expand joy, we grow in joy, and then we eventually raise our vibration to the point where we can handle the nature of ecstasy as a standing experience in our nervous system, which it already is in the nature of the soul. The soul lives in a constant state of ecstasy. So no wonder it can't enter you fully, because you're not only gonna burn up, you're gonna burn up. You're not only gonna burn out your nerves and your nervous system and your consciousness, you're gonna burst into flame because the friction is gonna raise vibration to the point of ignition. So we have to gradually acclimate ourselves to the higher states of spiritual potential. Well, we will. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're operating at a higher frequency in our nervous system than slugs. Well, banana slugs anyway. I don't know about the other slugs. I don't want to demean the slug kingdom, but evolution does offer opportunities. And that's why certain birds that we find are very high strung beings. Inside themselves, there's a type of being demonstrating as a bird, because that's as low as its vibration can go and still enter into matter. It's too sensitive. It's some kind of an angelic or diva being trying to become a human being so that it can share that experience in its long history of living. And it needs to be birds, because if it tries to be a dog, it's too dense a vibration for its nervous system. So these are philosophies and thoughts and ideas that we can look at and think, well, that may be true, it may not be true. But if you've ever owned a parrot, you'll know just how sensitive these birds are. They're really sensitive. And so, and it tells you how sensitive we are. We're pretty sensitive beings when we become attuned to it.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, we can go on with this, but we don't need to. We've made a point about opening up your doorway, the window in you, and letting a new expression come through you.
Yeah.
An expression that speaks
Unconditioned
for
love.
itself. Huh?
Unconditioned love.
Yeah, unconditioned. Let it talk through you without words. Your words aren't needed. If you're shining that out of yourself, you may not see the colors or the frequencies with your visible eye, but you know you're doing it. You know you're letting the log jam go. You're letting love come out to the people around you, to the world around you, as it is. And you're not trying to condition how you relate it to that homeless person or your wife or your dog. You're giving it. You can do that. You can have your miniature son in you as your idea of how you're going to be a person as you grow up. But this you're letting come through you as it is, as the universal nature itself. That love which entered into Jesus at the time of the baptism is greater than your personal idea of it.
Yeah.
That's the point, isn't it? That's why it can do things like change water into wine. It has that unique capacity if it's unrestricted and flows out of a being. So it's in every human being, thanks to that guy. That guy was capable of taking it into himself and harmonizing with it, recognizing it, honoring it, and staying faithful to it, even though they took him all the way through death with his responsibility to it, because he would not let it go. He held to it and held to it for the human race. And by the crucifixion of all of that, it suddenly released itself into the entire human race. So everybody has it. Everybody has this connection. And it's time for us to let it speak through us. in its own voice, in its own light, in its own heart. And we can either choose to honor that light, become closer to it, be more like it, or we can reject it. That's the freedom of free will. And don't be dismayed because some people will reject it. It's the nature of humanity. There are some who just, and more than one, by the way, it's not just a small sprinkling. In the hierarchical archives, it's described that 2/5 out of 5/5, 2/5 of humanity will not be able to choose it sufficiently to continue at a certain point on this planet in their own development and evolution. They're just not going to say yes soon enough. And that's not a fault or a weakness, it's a condition of development. So, and that's why Armageddon is in the Bible. It's the point at which the planet itself says, okay, everybody who can continue on this journey because you can embrace love so deeply that it affects every atom of your being, move over to the right. That's 3/5. The others who don't want to do that, you don't have to do that, but you're going to have to take evolution somewhere else because Earth is letting go of its material density at such a level that evolution here for you isn't possible. So you can't do it anymore after certain changes are made. Now that sounds like a bad thing, but it's neither good nor bad. It's just a fact that we come to that place. And when we come to that place, there's no crime in being in one group or the other. It simply determines where you go next. So I just say that for me, appreciating, incorporating, and developing your relationship to love seems to be the most positive possible personal evolution and development that a human being can do. And so I recommend that. And I want to become good at that in myself and helping others who are interested in that. That's all. And people who don't want that and are interested in something else, someone else will have to advise and teach them because I'm not interested in that choice. But it doesn't make it either good or bad. The evolution of the universe is a long, slow process. And by the way, some that remove themselves from Earth's future will rejoin it after they gather certain experiences that they need and recognize that that's something they want to continue with. So there's no fault or blame in any of these things. But there is outcomes. There is cause and effect.
Yeah.
So let's work on bringing humanity to a place where it can enjoy a more positive experience with itself, with love, and in the future, I think.
I agree.
You agree? Okay. Now, what are we going to do about it,
Amen.
right? Let's see if we can do
Well,
something about it.
we carry on and we get clearer about it and we get stronger at it and we hold greater, and hopefully we can expand the Love Foundry to a point where more people join and we grow a group of others who are doing the same thing so we can offer that out to more people. So,
well, the Love Foundry is a foundation. It's a tax-exempt foundation, 501c3 they call it, which is fine if you want to give money to it and take it off your income tax. But more than that, it belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to me or you or anyone who runs it or operates it. And it belongs to the public as an organization functioning on the public's behalf. And if the public wants it, then they strengthen it and it operates in a greater way on their behalf. And if they don't want it, it doesn't get strengthened and it fades away like all things should that don't get public support. So I don't have a concern for any of that, except I would like it to be something that works on behalf of humanity and supports our next step into this acknowledgement of the empowerment of love into the human consciousness. It's all an issue of consciousness, not anything else. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing broken. There's nothing that we need to fix. It's simply a recognition of what already is in us, waiting for us to release it through ourselves to the rest of the world. Honestly, it's that simple, but it isn't simple and it isn't easy because you've got to do it. You got to find it, do it, acknowledge it, join with others, talk it over like every other damn thing. We have to grow it. We have to grow it.
Yeah.
But when we want to grow things like cell phones, we do. So we'll grow an app that teaches us how to do this, and we'll put it to work, and we'll get the human race going in the right direction and maybe stop killing ourselves in mass numbers.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That would be nice, yeah.
And I think it's quite doable.
Right.
Very doable.
All right, Seb, sing us out of here and let's see where we go.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Taylor, wherever you are now. But thank you for joining us. And
Put a title on this, which is what? What do we want for a title on this one? I don't know. The Window of Love, I guess.
The Window of Love. Perfect.
All
Thank you,
right.
everyone. Until next time.